and all I remember is a flash, like a big white light, and then I couldn't breathe, and everything was purple. And I popped the door open, and I just hear my buddy saying, I'm hit.
There's no question that combat changes you as a person, but it's the kind of change that can be both subtle and far-reaching. You learn to internalize fear, angst, and doubt, but not necessarily to redirect them, and that's exactly what can make a person a good soldier. You come to realize that you can handle anything that modern life can throw at you.
To be honest, how does one end up becoming homeless? You don't care anymore. I'd already slept in the worst conditions.
What is true bravery? What makes a hero a hero? Tested by the worries of what's happening at home, thousands of miles away, and the reality of what you're facing here and now. When your life is in danger every second, and it's either kill or be killed. An original podcast from Incongruity Media. This is Anthony Russo, and this is War.
Chris Riess wanted a life of travel, adventure, and excitement, which isn't completely out of character for a young man. For Riess, as for so many people who choose military service, there was this undercurrent notion that he should go do something. It was all drive and no direction. He started out trying to make it as a professional surfer, and when that looked as if it wouldn't pan out, he started making other choices.
I just really wanted more out of my life. I was always an adrenaline junkie, always doing pretty dangerous stuff, and it was just kind of like the next transition. It wasn't always a matter of if I joined the Army, just kind of like when. My brother, he served in the war, and my younger brother in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and I felt a real sense of duty. Like, I was always told growing up that we had a debt to our country for the freedoms provided to us. I'm the type of person that I don't like to owe anybody anything, and so I felt like my military service was the way to balance it out. Went to the recruiting office in a little town called Chiefland, Florida. In 2008, I got put in the delayed entry program and didn't actually join the military. In 2009 is when I shipped out to MEPS and went out to basic training. I joined as a cavalry scout. I wanted to do the stuff that I seen in the movies. I wanted to live a more exciting lifestyle in the military. I felt like if I was to go to war and not actually do any of the fighting or anything like that, I would regret it. So I really wanted to be on the front lines, running missions and stuff.
There was a romance to the cavalry, especially for a young man who grew up watching westerns, and his experience at basic training only further amplified that romance. First, he was in pretty good shape, so the daily PT demands weren't a problem for him. And as an older recruit, Riess joined in his mid-20s, he also had the maturity to withstand a lot of the haranguing from the drill sergeants. But in the end, he was still a kid with a kid's expectation and a deep need to prove himself to himself, to shake off childish doubt and confirm that he was a responsible grown-up.
I had never really seen snow before, and there was a drill sergeant there. He was originally from a town about 30, 40 miles from the town I grew up in. We never knew each other or anything, but he would always mess with me because we were from the same area. Me and a couple of my friends were out at first formation before anybody. I decided I was going to make a snow angel because I've never made snow angels, and that's what you do with snow. Out of the shadows, this drill sergeant materialized. Drill Sergeant West, and he just materialized out of the shadows. He's like, "You having fun, Riess?" And I knew I had messed up. And he leans in real close, and I'm like, I'd never seen snow before, Drill Sergeant. And he's like, it's fucking majestic, ain't it, son? And he was like, "You're gonna get real acquainted with it." And I ended up salting and shoveling snow for about 2 hours after that.
By the time he got to his duty station in Fort Campbell, he knew he would get a chance to see even more snow in the mountains of Afghanistan. So while he was home for Christmas 2009, Riess got married to a woman he'd been dating for more than 7 years, figuring that the long-distance relationship would be easier to manage if they were married before they tried it. That July, he got what he signed up for, a combat tour just south of Kandahar.
I'd be a liar to say I wasn't nervous going to war, but it was real for me when I got on that bus and I was saying goodbye to she was my wife at the time then. She knew my job was dangerous and she's seen some stuff online about it, but I didn't really tell her exactly to the extent. So she was worried, like she was always worried about me getting hurt over there, and that was always a moment of concern for her. When I got on that bus though, and you just look around and it's just so solemn. Everybody's like, they just know we're going to war. We're not going to see our families for a year, and we don't know if everybody's coming back. That's really when things started kicking in.
By the time they landed in Afghanistan that July, the surge was well underway. Riess's platoon had a few guys who had seen combat before, but the preponderance of his comrades still had their first year of combat ahead of them. Like so many other soldiers, Riess had the notion that he would be landing in a war zone, Vietnam style, and have to rush into fire just to get off the plane. That wasn't the case when they landed in Afghanistan, but that didn't make the experience much less alien.
Being in the American military, especially combat arms, it's all about being the toughest alpha male, not showing any fear, just really pumping up the masculinity. But in the A&A Army, they were more goofing around, joking around, not taking things seriously. And that was kind of a big shock to us because we knew that we were pushing out to a pretty dangerous area. The COP that we were pushing out to was called JFM in the Arghandab River Valley. So it was a point of concern for some of us. My relationship with the A&A was pretty shaky at best. I was not confident in their ability to run missions. I didn't think that they took it seriously. I was expecting when I met them, they would want to take back their country. They would want to run these missions and they would be happy that we were there to help. But what I quickly realized was we were there to do the work and they were there to reap the benefits, i.e. the weapons, I don't know. I mean, it didn't seem like they were there to fight the war at all. Our AO pretty much extended into the heart of the Green Triangle, where they grew a lot of their poppy and marijuana. And it was also pretty much the Taliban stronghold. They have had control of that area for the entire time. It was a tense time because we knew when we were waiting to push out that the unit that was there before us, they had taken major casualties and wounded in only like 3 or 4 months, and they had to be replaced. Our leaders were out with them getting understanding of the area, and one of the guys got shot in the face. Like, the bullet went through his cheek, but that was like one of the first missions that they ran. All the radio chatter we were picking up from the Taliban was, oh, the guests are here, the guests are here.
The fact that the Taliban knew they were changing meant there would be tests for weak spots. When units handed over control of the area, fighters would arrange attacks aimed as much at finding weaknesses in the different command and operational structures as much as killing Americans. For their part, though, the soldiers knew that this would be the case and began changing up the look of their COP as a way of setting the tone for coming confrontations.
And the engineers were like clearing the area around our COP. So like we could have like a field of fire and nobody could just like sneak up through the bushes over the walls or anything. And we were just sitting there. We were joking around. It'd been a pretty easy day. We were providing overwatch and we got hit. All I remember is a flash, like a big white light, and then I couldn't breathe and everything was purple. And the halon system had went off, which sucks all the oxygen out of the air. Somebody snuck up in a wadi and hit our truck with an RPG. My sergeant was like saying RPG, but my initial reaction was I couldn't breathe and I popped my door open. And then when I start realizing that we got an RPG, I hear my buddy in the radio saying that he's hit, and I'm just like, I gotta be missing something. And I just slowly, I'm like looking at my hands and my legs. tapping my chest, and you don't really understand what's going on. And then you just got to kick into motion, like get the wounded to where they needed to be. Our main weapon system had been damaged, like it wasn't operable, and I had popped the door open to return fire, but that we had friendlies around, and I was disoriented, and I didn't want to, risk hurting a friendly. And my sergeant was like, let's get Shrance in. So we tried to take Shrance in, and we tried to take my buddy in, and he caught some shrapnel in his face and his arms. I remember looking back, and he's just covered in blood, and I was like, nah. I remember just thinking, this is insane. Like, this isn't supposed to happen. We were only like 200 meters outside of our cop, and it took us a good 15, 20 minutes to get in that gate. The A&A, we had to wait for them to go, and they just couldn't get it together, and I was so mad. I remember looking at them, and yeah, it scared me. And after that day, I was like, nah, I'm gonna make this as hard as possible. And it all happened in like seconds, but so much happened in those seconds. It changed you. It changes people.
What changed for Riess was the belief that they were invincible. Intellectually, everyone knows it's a dangerous job, but being on the ground, seeing the sheer numbers and technological superiority the US had, it was easy to slip into the kind of confidence that borders on complacency. Seeing his buddy covered in blood, though, and watching the medic work on him, things got a lot more real for Riess. This was a person he knew, someone he was close to, whose place he very well might have been in. The reality was hard to shake, even as the medic washed away the blood to reveal non-lethal wounds. His buddy would be back in a couple of weeks, but Riess was dealing with the confusion and guilt that comes with truly looking mortality in the face for the first time. The incident would color his perception for the rest of the tour. The tough thing about finding grooming products for men is that a lot of the stuff out there is super fragrant. Plenty of guys like that, but I'm not one of them, which is one of the reasons I was really happy to be introduced to some of Duke Cannon's soaps and lotions. Duke Cannon's product design process starts and ends with active duty military members. They come up with the product ideas and then test and review the new products. If it doesn't meet their expectations as well as their standards, it just doesn't get sold. It's that simple. That's why a portion of their proceeds directly supports veterans' causes. Duke Cannon sells basically everything you need and nothing you don't. I've been doing a ton of yard work, and it's really done a number on my hands. It's not critical that my hands are super soft all the time, but it would be nice if they didn't hurt, and having itchy palms is just the worst. The Duke Cannon Bloody Knuckles hand repair cream goes to work on my hands immediately, providing relief and taking the edge off some of the roughness, and it's completely fragrance-free. From a solid line of soaps for men to hair and beard products to cologne and bathroom accessories, there's really just too much cool stuff to talk about. Seriously, check out their website and I'm sure you'll find something that intrigues you as well. Visit dukecannon.com right now and get 15% off your first order with the promo code WAR. Free shipping on orders over $35. That's dukecannon.com, promo code WAR. Having arrived safely back at the COP, Riess still was troubled by the incident. No one had been killed, although both he and the sergeant had had their bells rung. Still, there was this looming guilt and a nagging feeling that he had somehow failed at his job, or at least in his vigilance.
I was pretty shaken up immediately afterwards. They were pretty supportive. They'd come by and be like, look, nobody knows how they're going to be when they get blown up the first time. Just use it as a learning experience. You're scared. Every day you're scared. But there comes a point. It could be the first mission. It could be a couple weeks in. But there just comes a point where you're like, if I die, or that you just decide that you're already dead. You're not making it home. Me personally, I was like, if I'm dead, I'm going to cause as much damage and take as many of them as I possibly can with me before I die. And I reserved myself to the fact that I was not going to make it easy for them to kill me. Part of it was I didn't want people to think I was weak, so that was kind of when you learn to just push all that away. Another part of it was I didn't want to let anybody down, because screw all the political reasons being over there, or every reason that you could think of, like, oh, pride, duty, all that goes out the window. All you care about is the people to your left and your right. That is all that matters. You don't want to let them down. You want them to know that if something like that happens, that they want you by their side, because you don't have to, you're gonna, protect them.
And so that's what he did for the rest of the tour. He set aside the illusion that he was going home alive, as well as the pretense that there was any such thing as safety. Instead, Riess kept his head down, did whatever he was asked, and waited for the chance to go back home. Once he got it, it wasn't really the break he thought it would be. He came home early in the tour during the days leading up to Christmas, but would be back on a plane bound for Afghanistan by Christmas Eve.
You build it up so much in your head about how great it is. And don't get me wrong, it feels amazing to get on that plane. Part of it's not having to fight for a while, and part of it's just not having to think about war. You get home, it's emotional, you see your family, but at the same time, it's kind of like there's this unspoken thing that it just seems like everybody's like trying to figure out, like, I don't know, are you different? You know what I mean? Like, everybody has this expectation. You see all the movies and stuff, people with the 1,000-yard stare and stuff. And then after that, you just kind of get in your mode. It's really tiring. Everybody wants to see you. Everybody wants to say hi. And you're just running around the whole time. Oh, to go back to Afghanistan, that's a hard day. That is a hard day. It's different than when you first go, because you know what you're going back to, and you kind of got used to relaxing and not having to worry about stuff. And of course, all your family's scared, and it's a hard day. It is a hard day.
The danger's kind of a given, but it can be the relentlessness of it that wears on a person, and in a way the powerlessness over your fate. Although he had tried resigning himself to this fact, it didn't make it any easier to endure. Moreover, with every close call, the notion of coming out on the other side seemed more and more ridiculous to even bother considering, especially given that there were no real days off. That is, a person might be off duty, but days off aren't a thing during war.
There wasn't really like a spot where you were like, okay, well, I could let my hair down, and at any moment they were attacking us. I can say when we set up our patrol base in Haji Ram, the attacks on the cops stopped. They really more focused on us in Haji Ram that's where most of the attacks would happen. Haji Ram was its own kind of, it was just a different atmosphere, like, because most of the other patrol bases we set up were kind of closer to our cop. Out there, you knew that it was going to take a little while for any QRF teams to get to you. Every mission we went on out there, we always had air support. We'd have Kiowas and Apaches above, or at least on station. The fighting was a lot tougher out there. We would get attacked from towns and stuff when we were on patrol. Everywhere. You just never knew when it was going to happen. And I just got off of guard duty, and I'd gotten all into my PT shorts, and I was getting ready to go take the shower. All of a sudden, I just heard this crack. I remember thinking how inconsiderate they were being. All I wanted to do was get clean.
By the time spring came on and the fighting season started up again, Riess had pretty much pushed mortal fear deep into the back of his consciousness. As far as he knew, he had perfected the emotionless approach to day-to-day combat that he needed to stay focused. He was able to keep combat mostly at arm's length from what he thought of as his real self, but it wasn't an attitude he could maintain indefinitely. Even when you learn to stop fearing for your life, you're not insulated from the implications of having others taken from you.
Lauren Miles Buffalo died March 9th, 2011. He stepped on an IED that was in a doorway. We were supposed to fly out a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. We were going to be out of country. I'm pretty sure that they weren't even supposed to be running this patrol, or we weren't even supposed to be running this patrol. He was in 1st Platoon. he just kept smiles on everybody's face in the unit. Always goofing around. It was pretty rough on everyone when that happened. I think he died in the medevac. I'm not sure. I was back at the base. We were on guard, I believe, that at that time. When I found out about it, I was actually sleeping. And my section sergeant came in, and he was like, excuse me. He said that Buffalo died, and that was pretty much it. And we just we didn't know. Honestly, it didn't really hit me until the services. I just I had been pretty emotionless. Like, my emotions had been bottled up pretty well up until that point. Nothing really affected me much. And the services are hard. Everybody's standing at attention. They play taps. Well, at first sergeant will read out roll call, and the first sergeant will call out the soldier's name a couple times and then say that they are excused from service, and then they'll play taps. Some of the more closer friends would make speeches, and you have the rifle with the boots and the dog tags, and it's rough. Yeah, after it's all over, we're all standing around, and it's just real solemn. Nobody's talking, and we had to go back out to Haji Ram, and we ran a couple missions afterwards. And I know I said I was pissed a couple times, but we were mad. Like, real mad. Kind of like we were looking for a fight. We were going to the areas that we knew they were going to try to attack us. And on our last mission that we ran, we were geared up. Like, the mission before that, I had actually shot a small D. We were at an area that we were being attacked during a firefight. And the next mission, we were all strapped up. We had our AT-4s, and we were ready. Like, we wanted payback, and they actually called the mission off because my commander, losing Buff was a shame. Like, we shouldn't have. A lot of us felt like we shouldn't even have been running missions at that point.
The shine of coming home is just a little dimmer after losing someone. There's less joy in it. Just as complex for Riess, though, was coming home to married life. It was something he hadn't experienced in any meaningful way, which only made it all the more daunting.
I was probably just as nervous going home as I was coming there, to be honest. What you dream about this moment, like, pretty much from day one. Like, oh, I just want to get back home. Think about all the food you're going to eat, all the stuff you're going to do, and how much easier life is going to be. It was different. You think war is hard. You think Afghanistan was hard. In the big scheme of things, it was easy. You knew when to do your job, what uniform you had. You set up your stuff, so you're always ready to go. You always knew what was expected of you, and then you get back home. And I had a wife when I was deployed, but at the time, it was more a title. Like, I didn't actually have a relationship with her, like, in the real sense. And then you get home, and there's, like, emotions and fights. And, I mean, when you first get home, everything's, like, sugar and rainbows. Like, everything is great. And then real life starts setting in. Like, my wife was used to being the head of the household. She was used to paying the bills and stuff. And I come back and I'm like, now it's my turn. Or, I'm taking up my duties. And, there's like that struggle. I was different. I was a different person when I came home. She didn't really know me. I was a lot colder, more distant. My deployment was pretty violent. I mean, you see people stepping on IEDs and aftermath, and it leaves a mark on you.
In addition to the tension of learning how to live life as a married couple, there was a conflict about staying in the army. His wife wasn't thrilled with the idea of Riess staying in. She had hoped instead that he had gotten his desire to fight out of his system. For his part, Riess worked to convince her that they could have a good life in the military, but it was a really tough sell. As it turned out, he wouldn't be able to save his marriage or his career. Every week I speak with men and women who have seen and done things most of us never will have to. And to a person, they all understand that they have to find a way to make peace with their lives if they're going to be successful after the military. But they're not alone. So many of us have to deal with the distance between what we want our lives to be and what they are, and a good proportion of us need help to navigate that distance. BetterHelp Online Counseling can provide that help and guidance. The process is simple and private. You sign up online and answer some questions about yourself. Questions like, how are you sleeping? Are your eating habits what you'd like them to be? How do you feel about your job, your relationships? It really doesn't take too long, and more important, it starts you thinking about how to zero in on the issues that matter most to you. BetterHelp also asks about things you want in the counselor, including age, gender, and specialty. Then, while you wait, it finds a person suited to your needs and preferences and gives you a number of appointment options. Sessions can take place via video, telephone, text, or chat and are completely confidential. BetterHelp even can provide financial aid for those who qualify. We all like to be self-reliant, but sometimes getting a hand figuring things out is the best way to exert our autonomy. With BetterHelp, you don't have to even leave your home. It's private and it's personal. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. This Is War listeners get 10% off your first month with the discount code WAR. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/war. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/war. As Riess settled back into life in the States, he clung to remaining in the Army. It's where all his friends were and where he truly felt at home. Add to that this welling anger left over from his deployment, and it only increased tension in the house. But in the end, neither he nor his wife really got what they wanted.
Me and my buddy, we were playing video games, and I went upstairs to get something or talk to my wife, and I slipped down the stairs, and that was it. I don't remember anything. I got life flighted to Vanderbilt, and I woke up in the hospital. Kind of like a big joke in my unit. Everybody was like, we went through all this crazy stuff, and you come home and you get taken out by some stairs.
He tried returning to duty after his recovery, but he couldn't perform his duties as he once was able. So, Christopher Riess was med-boarded out of the Army.
So when I got out of the Army, it was just kind of like I was depressed because that's what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to go. Me and my wife were having problems. I enrolled in school, but I started really having nightmares, a lot of really bad PTSD symptoms. Ended up getting divorced in 2014. When me and my ex-wife split, I was staying with a friend, and at this point, I was just mad at the world, and I had all these PTSD symptoms. I wasn't sleeping. I went to the VA for some help. They gave me a laundry list of pills. I took them for a while, and they caused a lot of issues. The problem was I never was like the guy that took drugs and stuff like that. And so I didn't like the idea of taking them. And at one point, they had me taking over 30 pills a day. If I was to follow their prescription guidelines, I was supposed to take over 30 pills a day. And I told my counselor I didn't want to take them. She told me that she couldn't help me if I didn't take the pills. So I was like, screw this, and I just left, and I didn't really get any help from them.
The pills designed to reduce the anger and anxiety also caused weight gain and lethargy. Then there were the pills to help combat the side effects, but the only ones Riess really felt he benefited from were the pain pills. So those were the only ones he kept taking. They helped with the nightmares and with the anxiety as well, but not in a productive way. The thing about spiraling into depression and addiction to pain pills is, unlike stimulants that can send outward signs to everyone around you, pain pills just help you withdraw slowly enough that it mostly is unnoticeable.
To be honest, how does one end up becoming homeless? You just you don't care anymore. I'd already slept in the worst conditions. Me, I was never really sleeping on the street. Like, I would sleep on a couch, or I still have my car and I would sleep in that, or I had a tent and I had my service dog, and it was just me and her for a little while, like a year or two. I was dirty, but you kind of just thought I was camping. You know, I had my tent. I just didn't really let people in that part of my life. But at the same time, to be honest, I didn't really have a lot of people coming in and out of my life. There was very few people that I would even allow in it, you know? I wasn't talking to people on a regular basis. I'd go a week or two without speaking to anyone. I had family in the area that probably would have put me up, but I felt so alone and so isolated, and nobody understood what I was going through. I wouldn't go home. I wouldn't answer phone calls, and they were worried about me. In my head, I was wearing out the welcome. I just felt like I'd be better off alone. I was doing more harm to people close to me being near them. So that was the transition. I had some disability coming in. It wasn't a lot. I would work odd jobs, stuff like that. But I mean, my pain pills I was getting from the VA, so I don't know. I would fish or hunt for food. I mean, more often than not, my dog would eat and I wouldn't. So yeah, I just made do, you know what I mean? I got used to living with very little stuff and needing very little stuff, that it wasn't really that far of a stretch. There was a point when I knew that this is not what I wanted. This is not what I was meant to do. I knew I was stronger than that. I wasn't ready to give up. I felt like not a victim, but yeah, I guess kind of like a victim. You know, I've always been the type of person to take charge and, you know, fix my problems. And I just felt like this was a Band-Aid. It wasn't the answer I was looking for.
Still, it was enough just to be out on his own. While intellectually, Riess understood that he was sliding closer and closer to wallowing in the victimhood he dreaded, he also didn't feel like stopping it. He couldn't see much further past his present anger, resentment, and loneliness. We tell a lot of stories about how infidelity can ruin military marriages, but even more often we hear about spouses who just run out of gas as silence and anger turn a good partner into an intolerable one. But in Riess's case, the damage to the relationship didn't sever his ex-wife's goodwill or her concern.
So the turning point was actually my ex-wife found out. She found me and she called all these like veterans organizations and got me an interview with this one veteran organization. This social worker ended up getting me into rehab. When I was done with rehab, she got me into a place to live, got me enrolled in school again. When I was in school for a little while, I got accepted into a program through the Wounded Warrior Project for PTSD treatment. It was a really big turning point. Once I got into rehab, I was just going to take it one step at a time. After that, I got a house, and you know, you just slowly, it's like Legos, you just slowly get taller and taller. My buddy gave me a job, so I was working with him. The one social worker inspired me to become a social worker for veterans. I just graduated with my bachelor's in social work, and I'm in grad school right now working on my master's with a specialization in counseling for combat PTSD and addiction disorders. I know that what I needed to survive over there is okay, and it's also okay to leave that over there. For too long, I was upset at the person that I was. I was just angry. PTSD, if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't treat it, if you don't take the time and put in the effort to get to a good place with it, it will consume you. It will bleed into everything in your life.
Just as he had learned how to be a soldier, Riess began learning how to integrate being a soldier with being a regular citizen. It was essentially just additional training, but the training was more difficult and basic and required a different type of commitment and vigilance than fighting did. He had transformed himself from a kid with no set path into a soldier. Now it was time for another transformation.
Mine was more coming home and not, I don't know how to explain this, not leaving that stuff over there. I was on as like soldier in war, doing all this stuff for so long. That's just who I was. When I came home, I was always reading people. I was always trying to survey my surroundings. I was always making sure I had entry and exit points. You know, you're just always worried about what if. My happy ending would be where I'm in a position to help combat veterans possibly not go down some of the paths I went when I came home. I want them to know that they're not alone with what they're dealing with. If you know a veteran that is not necessarily coming around very often, keeps themselves pretty often, isolating a lot, chances are they're pretty close. If I can help, veterans when they come home, that would make my life. I would be super happy. You got to take time for yourself. Like, it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to have good days.
The thing about coming to terms with having survived military combat is that it's a process. You set aside everything you were when you enter the military with the goal of coming out on the other side transformed. Part of that transformation is learning everything you can, both by being taught and from experience, about what it takes to accomplish a mission with the greatest chances of staying alive. Getting out is a new mission, but the same tools for survival and success still apply. Next time on This Is War.
We didn't know where we were going, and we'd somehow taken a wrong turn. And I remember everyone in the village kind of looking at us dumbfounded. We were like, they've never seen Americans before? Just as my gunner was saying, hey, where'd all the people go? We got hit with a rocket.
Are you a combat veteran, or do you know one with a story to tell? Reach out to us at stories@thisiswar.com with your dates and branch of service and a brief description of the experience that you'd like to share. This Is War was written by me, Anthony Russo, and produced by Incongruity Media. If you like the show, you can help support us by visiting our sponsors or by leaving a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. You can also follow us on social media at This Is War. You also can find show notes, photos, and more background on each episode at thisiswar.com.